So who have you got? Luca, Joburg, welcome. Percy, Pretoria, Kumotso, welcome. Graham, Cape Town, fantastic. So we've got representation at this end from Cape Town and Joburg. Ahmed, great. Donald, Zimbabwe, fantastic. How are things at Zimbabwe? Modderfontein, excellent. Brits and Midrand, Johannesburg. Benjamin, Johannesburg, welcome everybody. So we'll just give it one more minute. There's still people joining. And then we'll kick into this. Hi, and Veronique, welcome. And Tracy, Wayne Phillips. Marilyn, welcome Marilyn. Okay, so in honor of those of you who have been on time, thank you very much. Let's get going. So by way of introduction, as you can see from the screen, which Ralph has generously shared, we're talking about Onboard. And the reason we're talking about Onboard is that Sirdar Group has been looking for someone to work with in the, not work with, but a preferred supplier for board papers for some time. We've been really struggling to find an electronic board paper system that wasn't extortionately expensive and that we could at least work with them to try and make it as useful for Africa as possible. And after a couple of years of searching, we uncovered Onboard, and in discussions with them, they have graciously decided to up their presence in Africa, and that's where Ralph comes from. So yes, Onboard are now officially in Africa, based in Johannesburg, and our guest and presenter today is Ralph. So Ralph, maybe just give us a little bit of an intro of who you are and how you ended up working with Onboard.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks for the intro. It's amazing to be here, and thank you everybody that's taken time out of your busy schedules to take part in this webinar. Yeah, I've spent many years in South Africa and abroad working in telecommunications mainly and software systems, and I actually spent a little bit of time running an NGO as well. So a bit of very
I didn't know that.
interest. Yeah, exactly. And actually, Onboard has got a lot of good references with NGOs, by the by. But that's another discussion for another day. So yes, I was approached as Passageways, the company that owns Onboard software, wanted to establish a presence down in Africa and have a much more focused proposition to addressing the African market. And that's how I came to be on board with Onboard.
Awesome. So for those of you who haven't really heard of Sirdar Group before, start maybe from the beginning. I'm Tim Holmes, one of the senior partners. I've been with Sirdar Group since 2013, originally from the UK, which may be why I've got you're picking up an unusual accent. What we want to talk about today is our usage of board papers and board paper management systems in the past and what we've learned from that, and then try to dig into how Onboard can overcome those difficulties, inefficiencies, etc. So for you, Ralph, we'll go into it later when you go into your demo, but certainly some of the things we've picked up are really around the access to information. So emailing PDFs, etc. works fine, but then you've got to find the PDF. Where did it go? Which version am I looking for? Version control is a massive problem, and I know practically every board meeting I've ever had with PDFs, I'm always scratching around trying to work out which version of the agenda or the board papers that I should be presenting, and as a chairman, that can be problematic to say the least. And then also just the fact that in a normal manual process, we end up with lots of chunky bits. So there's a voting process, which is manual, and then you record it as a resolution. You've got, and maybe you need to sign documents with digital signatures or manual signatures, and that takes time and can take even up to a week or so as people send emails backwards and forwards. So if you can touch on those kind of things, that would be really, really useful. And then a few questions we've had from users in the past when we've talked about board paper systems is that, where's the data held? And I think people are very much more nervous about that question than they probably were in the past. And with the US gleefully accessing any data they can get their hands on, most people are fairly wary of having their board papers and all of that confidential information on a US-based platform. And I guess there's similar issues with other countries in Europe and Africa as well. So that would be fantastic if you can cover that. And then just from an administration perspective, I mean, you've got the version control issue of putting together a PDF, which takes time, is clunky, can sometimes not get the right formatting, etc. And then it's stuck in one document, so it's often difficult to pick apart and add new pieces in later. So around that sort of ease from an administration perspective. So it's all very well the director having a great experience, but if the administrator's pulling their hair out trying to get the information to the platform, that also doesn't help. So yeah, definitely one of the things that comes up often. So how do we control versions? How many versions can you see? And then how quickly can you update things so that we make sure that we go into the meeting, we've got everything that we need to have, the right version in the right order, and it's clean. As it is a big thing. And then when you're accessing the information and looking through and going through the board papers, in that respect, a PDF is quite good because you can annotate it, you can highlight it, you can write notes, whatever device you've got to go through it, you can transfer it to different platforms, your iPad, your laptop, whatever it might be. Whereas we found that some of the board paper software systems aren't quite that easy to transfer, or you can make notes in one platform, but you can't make notes in another platform, which is one of the reasons why we didn't go ahead with one of the choices, because it was just hugely frustrating as a chairman and as a director, in that situation. And pretty out anything else that you can think of that the listeners, viewers might benefit from. So yeah, over to you. Just logistics, please post any questions you have as we go in the Q&A. I'll be monitoring the Q&A. If it's relevant to what he's talking about at the time, then by all means we'll stop, answer your question so that we don't forget about the context. But yeah, please post any questions in the boxes. And I just wanted to get a sense of who's in the room. Please, can you indicate your role? So what we're really trying to identify is, especially when we get the questions back at the end, is this a CEO question? Is this an executive director question? Are you a company secretary? So it'll help us to identify who's who in the zoo, as it were. So yeah, just take a few seconds to fill that in. Okay, it's about halfway. Keep going, guys. Please just fill in, quick tick the boxes and tick multiple. So if you are multiple, that's also good to know. Otherwise we get skewed data if you only tick one of your roles. And I know as a chairman, I have multiple roles, and I'm sure plenty of you do too. Okay, give it 5 more seconds. Last couple of people. Okay, great. Thank you very much. So just going to share the results. So it looks like, Ralph, we've got a really good spread. Interestingly, not many executive directors who aren't the CEO, but then I would expect that because typically a decision maker would be the CEO or a frustrated non-exec director who wants to have better access to their board papers. So good. And for you as the company secretary, please post your questions so that we can answer anything that seems relevant. I'll just close that, and it's over to you.
Fantastic.
I seem to have got an email coming up on the screen, so I don't know if you've got, is that mine or yours?
It must be yours. I haven't touched mine yet. I hope. It could be an interesting start. Okay, Tim.
Okay, great. Let's go.
Good. Thanks very much for all of that. And as I said before, thanks everybody for joining. It was interesting to see on the attendees list, only one listed as company secretary. The Onboard platform has two kind of distinct personas, the administrator persona and the director persona. And I will try to show you a bit of both. but there's a lot of power obviously in the administrator persona, so that will be the persons that's making the meetings. And I'm not going to assume that it's only one company secretary on the call here. There's only one person that's administering. I'm sure a lot of you maybe have bit part to play in the setup of your meetings, and it should be interesting. So I'm going to jump into a demo. I'm going to say goodbye on my video just to make sure that we all don't have any bandwidth issues. And I'll continue to share my screen. And I guess you'll just pop in the chat box if you can't see anything, whatever, you'll let Tim know. Otherwise, I'll carry on.
Yeah, so I've got the chat box open.
Okay. So just before I leave the website that I've got on the front on the screen at the moment, the Onboard website built by passageways.com. That's the company originating out of the US that have built this software. There is an incredible amount of learning resources on this website for you to look at. Little videos, most of them are short and sharp 30-second clips, so they are very informative. So it's really worthwhile spending a little bit of time on this site just to have a look and see, and I'll obviously show you a lot of it now in reality, how it actually works, but there's a lot of resources here. So always remember that if you want to find something and you, for some reason, can't get hold of me, that you can have a look at the website. So I'm going to log into Onboard as an administrator, and then I'm going to do one or two things, and then I'm going to log in as a director, and so that you can see both sides of the picture. So, and I'll do that by swapping my browsers around. I trust you can all still see my screen. Just a little note on the sign in, and I think something I wanted to say in general about Onboard. It is a very secure platform. Tim touched on that a few times about the sensitivity of board information and the movement of data. Tim, you did mention about the Americans, and I suddenly thought maybe I should switch off because we are a very strongly Microsoft-based platform. But I certainly think the Microsoft Azure cloud environment is what they call the gold standard of security. It really is up there with the best. And the Onboard platform is built within that environment. So it's a very secure environment. As you can see, I've clicked on the login here. I've got what's called two-factor authentication. Basically means
Sorry, Ralph, on that point, I was more referring to the fact that the Azure platform, or the way that you're using it, allows you to move the servers where a particular user is hosted to different countries.
Right.
So if someone has versions of being hosted in the UK or the US or wherever, if there's and the Azure platform is pretty much everywhere now, you just basically move your data to that platform.
Quite right, Tim. Thanks for that. Yeah. So, and in fact, in South Africa as well. So the Azure environment has got a data point in South Africa, so on the African continent. So that's an important point to note if you are wanting to make sure that your data is stored, as Tim mentioned, in a specific location. So back to the demo. I've logged in to my landing screen. You can see that I'm an administrator for a whole lot of different companies. In this case, we're looking at Onboard Africa, which is our demo platform. And very quickly, you're into the dashboard screen. And this is what you'll work with on a daily basis. It's very nice and simply laid out. On the left-hand side here is all the action areas. You've got the calendar. I'll quickly go through them and then we'll jump back into the meeting. There's the calendar area, which is essentially where you will have your list of meetings, both past and upcoming. And that's how you will manage your schedule. And then you have an action section. And the action section is where you would do your e-signatures and your e-voting. If you want to have a document approved and digitally signed, you will set that up here, and we'll do one of those in a short while. The notification section, I guess that's similar to, I'm sure most of you have got WhatsApp, and when you look at your phone and you see a little red 1 or 2 or sometimes 10, depending on how many groups you're on, you'll see the number and you know you've got a message. The same thing happens here. Again, we should see that just now. This is where you can quickly log in and have a look at notifications and see what has changed and what you need to attend to. The resources section is essentially your secure repository. It is, I guess, as secure as a Microsoft OneDrive or a Google Drive, G Drive. It is a secure repository where all your documents can be stored, and you can store anything you want here, and it has unlimited storage capacity. And I always wondered how it could be unlimited, but I'm assured that it is unlimited. So now's the time to get in and use it, because there is literally no restriction on space. This is where you can store everything related to your company. If you wanted to, you can set up folders. You can have policies stored for reference during a meeting. You can upload your board minutes. You can even upload video recordings of your meetings, of your Zoom meetings, and you can store them all here for easy reference. So this is a secure repository. Then there's the directory section, and that is a very important part of what Onboard is about, which is very close and careful user management and permissions management. Very important with the sensitivity of data and the involvement of different people, that you are able to set the permissions that you want appropriately. And I'll go much more into detail as we go through the demo. But this is where you would add your directors and your members, and you can, on the right-hand side, you have a role where you can where you can decide if the person is a creator, which would mean they would actually have an input to the meeting. They may be uploading reports, or if they're just a viewer and will be taking part in the meeting as a reader, then they would be a member. You can also deactivate somebody if they've left the business, and you can deactivate them as from their role. And then if you look over here on the right, I've just clicked on those little buttons at the end. You can wipe the devices remotely, which is a very powerful feature. And as I haven't mentioned yet, but one of the other very important characteristics of Onboard is its offline capability. So you are able to work offline with Onboard. Onboard has apps in every major app store: iOS, Android, Amazon, Microsoft. You can download the Onboard app, and then you can log in securely as you've seen me do here, and you can access the board paper that has been built, which I'll show you in a short bit. And you can take that offline, work on it, make your notes and your annotations while you're offline. And then when you connect up, again, it syncs with the platform, and all your changes and your notes will then be uploaded to the platform. If your device is lost or stolen, and you're worried about sensitive data being out there, this is where you would click on this wipe devices remotely. And it works in a similar way. I'm sure many of you might have an Apple device. You have that facility with the Find iPhone functionality. If your phone is, or your tablet has been misappropriated, you're able to actually remotely wipe information off. So it's a very powerful feature. And you can remove members here. Yes.
A couple of questions that came up which are relevant to the screen, so it's probably easier to handle whilst you've got the screen open. So one of them was, can you have groupings with different permissions? For example,
Absolutely.
You may have a remuneration committee and they only see the remuneration detail.
So let me answer that, and I was about to get there, so that's good timing.
Cool.
At the top
and then
here,
the other question was, what's the app called? So is it called Onboard?
Yes, correct. It's called Onboard, or Passageways Onboard, depending on which store you're on. But yes, if you look for Onboard, and you'll find the app there.
So Passageways is the software company, and Onboard is the application, correct?
That's absolutely correct. Yes. Okay. So here are the groups. Just to answer that question, you can then set up the audit committee, for example. You could create a group here. You go and you click on this and you say create group. You can give a description of it and the name, and then you are able to add whichever members you want to have from your member
Ralph, you still there? We've obviously lost Ross and lost Ralph, so we'll just wait a couple of seconds to get him back. Must be an internet connection problem. Whilst we're waiting for him to come back on, is there any other questions that have come up so far that I can add to the list? And then when he's back, then we can pick those up. So look at the chat. Last groupings, apps called. Yeah, so any other questions? Otherwise, I can just give you a bit of some background or more stories around why we thought this was so important to be able to share a board paper system. I mean, it's really because if we're going to add additional value in the boardroom with statistics analysis, then we needed to find an application that could help us with that. So from talking to the developers, oh, welcome back, Ralph. So talking to the developers, one of the things that they are definitely looking at is some kind of analytics around the product. So if you've got the data around the meeting, then can we get some statistics around the board papers, or ultimately can we get some statistics around a recording of the meeting and those kind of things. So I think there's some really exciting opportunities that can potentially come in the future. Ralph, welcome back. We can't hear you, Ralph. You're on mute. This phrase of 2020 is...
You're on mute. Gosh. Yeah, 1,000 apologies for that. Murphy's Law, of course. The internet decided to drop at the absolute opportune moment, but luckily I managed to make an alternative plan and I'm back on. Can everyone see? And I guess I need to reshare my screen.
And then one last question, just as you're finding your screen, was what is the storage capacity? I think you mentioned that the system has unlimited storage space. Is there some kind of restriction on the app itself when you're running the app on the tablet?
No, I've got to be honest, I haven't actually got the exact answer to that question.
Although practically you typically only look at 1 or 2 board meetings at a time, so
yeah, exactly.
There's plenty of capacity.
I certainly think you're only limited to the capacity of your device. So it would depend on how much space you have on your device.
Okay.
But the app itself is not limited.
Great.
And I will check what the experts say about that, and I'm happy to come back on that.
Cool.
All right, sorry about that, guys. Let's jump straight back to where we were. If everyone can still see my screen, can you see my screen, Tim? I guess if you can see it then.
Yes, we can see your screen. Please continue, Ralph.
We were in the middle of setting up groups, as was asked, some of the questions. So you can set up your groups. I just want to get rid of my Zoom thing here. There we go. You can set up your groups over here, and then what we'll see is when we go and set up a meeting and we create the meeting, we can give certain groups access to certain parts of the meeting or to the entire meeting. So it's very powerful in that sense, in terms of being able to manage the permissions of your different role players. So that's the directory part. And then the last one here, just going again, as I was doing, going down the side very briefly, there's a messenger section. And that is basically just a messaging section where you can send messages within the portal to different members. There's also a tasks section, and the tasks management, it's task management as in very similar to the task management that you see other Microsoft programs, Microsoft task list. It's the same kind of thing, but what's powerful about it is you're able to set tasks and assign tasks to people in the group within the board, if you're wanting them to vote on a certain resolution, or if you're wanting a signed document, or if you're just wanting them to do their pre-reading by a certain date, you can assign certain tasks to people and they'll get notifications. So it's a good way to manage all of that process within the portal itself. Just going then back to the top, the dashboard is basically just an opportunity for people to put information about their organization, pertinent information that's coming up in the meetings, and of course upcoming meetings will also show in here. So it's a nice sort of central area for people to be able to access what's going on. The organizational info you can set up as well. You are able to link your Zoom account. It is only integrated with Zoom at this point. When I say that, you can set up, you can put your Zoom account details in here, and then when you set up a meeting and you generate a Zoom link, it'll just take your details and automatically populate it. Having said that, you can use any web conferencing facility. You don't need Zoom. You can use Cisco WebEx, you can use Microsoft Teams, you can use Google Hangouts, you can use Skype, whatever your platform of choice is. And I'll show you when we make the meeting how that is easily done.
Just before you go on, Ralph, there was a question. Daryl, did you have a question? You had your hand up. Was it something relevant to what we're talking about now? I've allowed you to talk. Talking permitted, it says.
No, I can't hear anything if he's talking.
Okay, I will lower the hand. Just put it in the question box if it was something that we need to go through.
Okay, so that's just a brief overview of the main functions. It very quickly brings you to the calendar section, and this is the alert for the people who are setting up meetings. This is where you will create your meetings and create your agenda. And what's really powerful with Onboard is you don't need to set up an agenda from scratch every time. You can copy a previous agenda. If you're having a board meeting that follows a similar structure month in, month out, you can copy that agenda. You can go to even here, you could go to your past meetings and say, oh, we're going to be running a meeting similar to the September meeting. And while we're here, just to touch on one of the questions that you mentioned, Tim, in the beginning about accessing and version control. In this section here, I'll quickly pop back out into past meetings. You want to go and look at the board pack for September, view book. And you can have a look at the book here. So that it's stored within the meeting structure within Onboard. And you can also produce a PDF copy of the board pack. Of course, we advocate not printing and saving paper and all of these things, but you can certainly produce a PDF and you can store that securely as well. So that's just shows how easy it is to find that within the history of your meetings. So I have created a copy of the September meeting. I'm just going to change the name and say, well, we're preparing for already December. And we've got very simple to set up all the details. For those of you that are used to planning these meetings, you can do this very simply. We've got a meeting happening on the 9th of December, and we're trusting it's only going to be 4 hours. And here we are. So you'll see a button here in the middle called Set Up Remote Meeting. And if I click on that, it goes back to what I mentioned before. If I had my Zoom account generate account details linked, I would click this button, Generate Zoom for Meeting, and it would automatically populate me. But if I want to use another platform, as I mentioned, you're able to just generate the meeting and take the link and paste it in here, and that will then show up as your remote meeting detail. Then you go straight to the agenda. I would say you manage your attendees, but typically you want to set your agenda, and then you want to make sure that you have your attendees sort of accessing the parts that are important to them. This is, as I mentioned before, a copy of a previous agenda. So I can now go and play with this section. I might decide that this time there is no approval of technology because that happened before, so I'll delete that out of there. I may decide that the development update will come at the end, so I can easily drag that down. It's very simple, as you can see, to add and change pieces. Approval of the minutes. I'm just making more small insignificant changes. If you see on the right here, there's a green arrow. Every time I make a change, you see that the circle turns here. It's updating dynamically all the time. So it is always up to date, which is very powerful, and it stays within the portal. So you don't have to keep remembering to save your work. You can also import an agenda if you have already pre-built an agenda in Word. There is a template that you would need to follow to make sure that it fits, but you can then build that in Word and you can import the agenda here. So if that's how you like to work, that's also a possibility. But as I've shown you here, you can add sections, you can remove them, and you can change at will. And it's very simple to do. So now I haven't made too many changes, but here is our agenda. And now you can start to go within the agenda, and you can address different areas of the agenda. So you can decide that perhaps this is going to start 5 minutes later, and you can say this is very important to complete. And what you notice over here, it's updating. It's just some short form text that enables you to give a little bit of context to your agenda items. You'll notice now on the right-hand side here, I've got a permission section for members. So I can decide who is going to be part of this meeting. And I can decide to exclude people if this is obviously not a good example because it's a consent agenda, but if you have a conflict of interest and you want to remove people from that specific section, you can exclude them here. Then they will not see this part of the meeting when they're looking at the board pack. So it's great that they can still be part of the overall meeting, but you can exclude them from certain sections. And then, of course, you start to build the board pack. So you can add some documents. You may have uploaded already the documents to the resources section, or you can drag and drop from your machine. So you can add as you like all sorts of formats. Well, I say all sorts of formats, Word mainly, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, PDF. So Tim, you touched a little earlier on about the sort of admin involved in building the PDFs and putting all the documents together. So this is extremely easy. You just add the document. You can add multiple documents. You can drag and drop. It will upload the documents. Unfortunately, now it looks like my internet is still a little bit slow, so it's taking a while to upload. It's not a very big document. But you add the documents, and you'll see so this document has now been added. So we have that. We've got the approvals of the minutes. Whoops. And I can add some more documents.
Ralph, one question that often comes up, or one problem that often comes up in board papers is how it handles spreadsheets. So if you've uploaded a spreadsheet, what does it use to determine how that's going to appear in the PDF?
Yeah, that is a good question. So the Onboard uses a standard PDF conversion editor. So it converts if you were to create a PDF out of your Excel, that is how it will look. So it takes a PDF view. And I think if I know where you're going with this, I've heard that it's often preferable for people to be able to see the Excel view and be able to look behind the formulae and within the spreadsheet, if that's right. It obviously doesn't allow for that within the portal because it creates, it basically joins everything into one PDF.
But they could download the spreadsheet from the system and
Yes.
work on it externally.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to just upload a PDF, an Excel sheet, just so that
if
we can.
If the print layout has been set up correctly in the Excel spreadsheet, then that's fine. But if they need to look at more detailed formulas, other tabs or whatever, then they can just download the spreadsheet. Is that right?
That's exactly right, Tim.
Okay.
And I'm just adding a few documents here, just so we can have something in our board pack for everybody to see. But you see how simple it is just to plug in all the different documents into the different sections in the meeting. So here you've got your agenda, you've expanded it all, there's a collapse all here, you expand all, and you can see as you go through as an administrator that each section has got the appropriate document for that section. All right, so let's see if we can add one more doc. Don't want to take too much time to do this. So as I've shown you, you can change the time, you can add some long form data, and you can upload the documents. You can change the permissions of who can see what. So now, fairly quickly, we've come to the point where we've completed the upload of the documents into our board pack. In the middle of the screen here, where my cursor's, my hand is bouncing around, it says build scheduled 28 minutes. So it's got an automatic timer. Every time you make a change, it resets the clock. If you now go away and have a couple of cups of coffee, within half an hour, the book will be automatically built. But of course, the minute you make a change, it will start again. What I wanted to point out is on the top right here, you have meeting visibility, and it's currently unpublished. And what that means is you've been working on this meeting, setting up the agenda, uploading the documents. Nobody who's a member of this board can see anything because it is unpublished. So you can work on it without anybody having access. You may decide that you want to let everybody know that the meeting is on the 9th of December, so you can make the meeting visible. And you can send a message to all the attendees. Would you like to notify? Onboard will send an email and saying that there's a meeting now set for the 9th of December, and they'll be able to see the meeting. They won't be able to see anything else. Once you're ready with your pack and everything's done, you click on this button here, all visible, and then the board papers will become visible to the attendees. And what I will do now is I will build a book now. You've seen there, I've just clicked the button. You can actually, if you're impatient and you want to have it all happening now, you can click build a book. What it's now doing is taking the agenda and it's taking all the documents we've uploaded and it's generating this PDF on, as we speak. Obviously, the larger and the more the number of documents you have, the longer it may take. But it's a very powerful part of this tool. And there it's finished. It says open book. So now I proceed to open the book. I haven't published it yet. I'll show you how that looks in a second or two. You can expand this. You can even take this away so you can have a look. And there is your board book. Whoops. So you can go through the document. I'll just pop this here, you can see. So if you decide, I just want to see what the financial report looks like, you can go on the agenda over here and you can click on the financial overview and it'll immediately take you to the financial overview on the right-hand side here. And if you want to make some notes as a director, then you would be able to make some notes do your annotations, make notes, put sticky notes up and share them with them. And I'll show you from the director perspective. So this, in a nutshell, folks, is setting up the agenda and creating the board pack. And we are pretty much done. All that remains now is to make it visible.
So Ralph, there are a couple of questions related to this piece.
Okay.
Actually, very good question. Thank you, Rajiv. So you've excluded someone from a particular section.
Yes.
So when they open the board pack on the system, they don't see that. It's not in the PDF. It's invisible. Is that right?
Yes. It will
And
say.
what happens when you go through the meeting? Are they blocked off from that section? Or is there,
So,
the same thing, whether it's in the meeting or whether it's out of the meeting? They just don't see it at all.
Correct. They don't see it. There will be a blank page there that will say you don't have access to this section. So if you say, please everybody go to page 35, and if you go to page 35, then if you don't have access, it will say you don't have access to view this part. So it will still generate the book, but it won't show you the contents.
But from a recording of the meeting or the Zoom call perspective, is there any way that that person can be excluded from that discussion? That's down to the chairman, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it's down to the chairman.
Okay. Does that, I hope that answers your question, Rajiv.
That answers, yeah.
And there was another one, can a subsidiary share the same account with its parent, but still configure the portal in such a way that maintains data integrity and confidentiality? Because that's, I know that's something that's come up with a couple of our clients in the past, that how do you control the flow of information within the different levels of your organization?
So the permissions access is very important that I mentioned before. I've just clicked back to the screen. So if you've got a couple of boards that you're part of, you'll see them over here. If you don't have access, so you can control the access to the different entities at this point. You would either be able to access, so you could still have your access to the Onboard platform, but you would only be given access rights to the particular subsidiary or company.
Okay.
I don't know if that, hopefully that answers.
And then it's down to individual, yeah, so then it'd be individual user all the way down to the specific agenda item.
That's right, yeah. Any other questions on this section?
Has answered the question, apparently, thank you. Anyone else on questions before we move on? So now we're going to look at what the director perspective.
Yes, so now you can see here, I've published the meeting, so it gives me a notification as the administrator just to say the December board meeting has been updated, which is great. I'm now going to, this is the drum roll, go to my director. His name is Martin. And same story with the two-factor authentication. So now I'm logging in as a director. I'm logging in on the internet, on a browser, but if I had a tablet, I would then be going in through my iPad or my device. You can set up the authentication there to be the PIN code or Touch ID or Face ID, depending on what you've got set up. So now I log in and I'm a director on Onboard Africa. I see there's a number 2 there, so there's some notifications. I want to see what's happening, so I pop into notifications and it tells me, the December board meeting has been updated. Great. So now it's available. I can have a look. Here's the agenda with all the bits of detail that we've put in. And here is the book. I can now open the book. What I didn't show you before was that until I published it, there would have been nothing to see in the meetings. But now I'm able to open the book. We'll just wait for it to pop up. Okay, so let's say we want to make a comment on the financial report because I'm worried about the right, so this uses the standard PDF annotation tools that you would use if you were doing it on a PDF. And if I want to put a sticky note here, then I want to say, I want to understand and then I can share this note with Antonia, who's my CFO, specifically. Then when Antonia logs in, and I can't show you that view, and Antonia logs in and looks at the book, she goes down to this part here, my annotations, shared annotations, and she will see which annotations have been shared with her. You'll notice that in this example, no one has shared annotations with me or with Martin on this section, so you can't see any annotations, but this is where you would be able to see what people have written and what has been said in the board pack. And it's obviously, I think, Tim, you could speak a little more authoritatively than I would on the power of annotations and the ability to make your notes on the board papers like this.
Yeah, that's, I guess the biggest frustration with the PDF concept is you've got a PDF, you've made notes in that PDF, then you get version 2 the day before the board meeting. Now you've got to look at the version 2 PDF and the old one to look at your notes, etc., etc. So how does the notes work? If you bring in a new item to the board meeting, how does the notes work in that context? Do they stay with the document that you'd annotated?
Yes, they stay with the document that you've annotated. It consolidates the notes. But if you add something to the pack, then obviously that would be new.
Yep.
If there's a complete replacement of the pack, then unfortunately you would probably lose the notes as well, which is not ideal. But that would be, you wouldn't easily replace the pack.
So in other words, I've got the pack to start with. It's compiled into a PDF. I've made notes on it, downloaded it, whatever I wanted to do.
Yeah.
A new item comes in, it regenerates the PDF or the pack, but all of the notes and all the other documents that I've already been working on are still there.
They're all there, exactly. And that's provided that you have connected up. So if you've done those notes while you've been offline, you need to connect back up to the internet and sync, basically, if you understand that concept. So,
because otherwise they're stored locally and it doesn't know.
Correct.
That they've been...
Correct, yes. So as long as you sync, those notes that you've made will be there, and then any new stuff will obviously be new, but the notes that you had before will remain. Yeah.
Great. Any questions from the audience on what we've just covered in the last few minutes? Okay.
While you're doing that, I'm going to pop back to here and I'm going to show you, because we've got a couple of minutes left, an e-signature, just to give you an idea. So if you want to have a document signed, you just click Add. Sign. You can give it a date if you want to say this is only becoming available on a certain date. But at the moment it's in draft. As soon as you set it to open e-signature, then it becomes available. Who do I want to sign? I click in this middle section, the edit permissions. And I want my director, Martin, to be a signer. So I set that up. What document? I go down here. So allow signing with saved signatures. So with this e-signature functionality, you are able to upload a copy of your signature. I have had many questions asked, does this integrate with other signature platforms? Not as such. So there's no API that you can link and say, import my signature. But as long as your platform can export your signature, there's no reason you can't import that into in the same way as you would upload an image of your signature. But in this case, you can have saved signatures, or you can sign. If you've got a stylus with your tablet, you can also sign on the device. I'm going to add a document that needs to be signed. I'm just going to say it's the approval of minutes. And it's uploading it, I hope. Waiting for my... Let's just check that one again.
Whilst you're waiting for that to upload, maybe just comment on voting. You may not have time to go through an example, but can you do voting online as well as signatures?
Yes, you can. I can just pop out of that. That is something here. You can have approvals. You can also run surveys, but you can have approvals where you add a voting, and you can then, again, same story. You can call it whatever, you give it a name, and you vote. You can have a document that you add, which is the basis for the vote. And then you can set up who, of course, is going to be a voter, you know, same story, essentially, voter, there we go, Martin. You can require a signature of this if you want. And then you can open the vote, open approval. I just want to do that, and we can also open our signature. Sign off required. Let's quickly open that one because we're ready. What we didn't do yet is that we had to set a signature block. So we're opening the document that we want signed. Down here. And over here, I say add signature. There's the signature block. That's where I want it saved. I go finish and open. Do you want to open the signature? Yes, I do. And I go back. Now let me pop across to my director persona. And I look under notification, and it says there's an electronic signature title sign-off is required and is now open. There's also a new vote that is open. So we go to the signature, and I go sign document. And it opens the document I've just uploaded. Okay, it just happened a while ago.
And one signature request remaining in document. Okay, and it tells you where to put it.
Yeah, exactly. And I can, if my signature's changed, I can do whatever as I would do it. And I say, okay, add. And it saves my digital signature to the document. And you see now it's changed, it's been signed. So I've done. And then if I go back to my administrative view, I should now be able to close the signature because there was only one that was required. ESignature saved successfully. Let me open. Oh, sorry, download the document. So download the document. And there's my document signed in PDF version. So that's your ESignature done. Very simple.
There's a question here about the security of the signatures. So the way you showed it just now, it's linked to the director. So it's they're putting their signature in their login and no one else can see it. Is that correct?
That's exactly right.
The administrators designing the document, working out where the signature block needs to be, how many signatures there must be, all of those kind of things.
Yes.
And then the individual director logs in, sets up their signature, either it's a fixed one or it's at the moment and they can write it again, but it's only they that can see it and only they that can do it. Is that the way it works?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Okay. And to set up a document and get someone to sign is a heck of a lot quicker than any board meeting I've been in. So that's...
Well, exactly. That was super simple. Guys, I can see we're very tight on time, so I'm not going to take too long, but this is just to show you the voting, Tim, since you asked. So now we've set up a vote as we did as an.
I think that's self-explanatory. That's fine. I just wanted to see if it was available. And that's really, really simple.
The directive version, and we've issued our votes, and you can see the results. Yeah.
So I've got a quick poll I want to launch just to check on what everybody thinks are the most useful features, because what I know Ralph's been struggling with as to what pieces to include in the standard package for Africa or South Africa. So if you can just indicate which bits you would most likely to want to use, then that'll help him, and also helps us when we're talking to our clients as well, to get a better understanding of which features are most important. So just tick more than one. Thank you. Someone's ticked everyone. That's fantastic.
Lovely.
So it won't take too long, this one. It just really gives us a sense of, are they all important? Are some of them not very important?
Yeah.
It helps us focus a little bit. So yeah, thank you for adding that. Any other questions? Otherwise, we'll close that as soon as we've done this poll. We'll close out, and then I'll just post another poll, really just to ask the question of what next steps, and so that Ralph knows if any of you need him to get in touch, arrange a demo, etc. So anything else in the comments? Just chatting? No. Capacity we've talked about. Security permissions, persons using, so that's fine. And some comment from Dizwe about how useful that consolidation of annotations is. And I really like the fact you can share an annotation. That's fantastic. I mean, that's certainly not something you can easily do in a normal manual process, and saves a lot of toing and froing. So particularly important, I think, for executives or whoever prepared the board papers. If I can add an annotation, share it with you before the meeting, you've got a heads up of my question. You can come back into the meeting with an answer, or even send an updated board paper if it's material. So I think that definitely helps the communication process and helps make sure, as we talked about before, you're only talking to one version. So Ralph, just going to share this with you. Looks like they're all important.
Well, that's encouraging. It's good to see that most of what we're looking at.
Fantastic. All covered and all important.
Super.
That's great news.
Very good. All right.
Any other questions? Are there anything else that you want to? Looks great from a board secretary. Thank you for board secretary response. That's awesome.
Thank you.
And then just really for Ralph, just to know who to follow up with. If you'd like him to arrange a demo for the rest of your team, so you can bring the rest of your team up to speed, or a full featured trial, I gather they are free. How long that'll be, I don't know, but right now they're free. So jump whilst you get the opportunity. And if you want any more details, like just call me or a pricing proposal, then and by all means give us a shout. Thank you everybody for your time. I'll leave this poll up for a few seconds for those of you to think about what you might want to do as a next step. Just thank you for your time. I hope this was useful. I'm really excited about getting to use this platform with the clients I'm working with. We've done one trial and the response was really positive. So no, I think it's slick. You get a good quality output when you're looking at the papers, and from talking to the administrators and having worked as the chairman on the board myself, it's really straightforward to access and see the information, make all the points and all the rest of it. So no, very impressed. Great, thank you. No other questions that I can see. And thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Tim, for the opportunity.
Great. Cheers, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Take care all. Bye-bye.